throw it over to Sarah Mooradian at Cure. If you can talk a little bit about both your organization and then what, if anything, does current Minnesota state law require data centers to do regarding community engagement, transparency, delivering community benefits? What concerns have you heard when you've been engaging with communities across the state? And maybe throwing in that too, because we're low on time. Are there also tax incentives from the state level that communities should also be mindful of that may be part of the development package that they don't see at the local level?
Yeah, great. Yeah, I'll try and be quick. I know we're really, really low on time there. So Sarah Mooradian, Government Relations and Policy Director at Cure. So we're a rurally based nonprofit dedicated to protecting and restoring resilient communities and landscapes by harnessing the power of the people who care. Our office is based in Montevideo, but we have folks working across the state. So we've been working on data center stuff for at least the last year and a half. We really jumped in initially because the Amazon Web Services asked the Public Utilities Commission for an exemption to the Certificate of Need process for its backup generation at a proposed facility in Becker, Minnesota. They wanted their 250 diesel generators for a combined capacity of up to 600 megawatts, which is about the amount of energy for 600,000 homes or the amount of energy that the Monticello nuclear plant can provide. That's the amount of energy we're talking about. They wanted an exemption from that so they didn't have to look at the alternatives to diesel generators. So we weighed in and said, no, we think you should really check on that. The PUC ultimately agreed. And then from there, we jumped right into the legislative process because Amazon was looking to get a bill passed that would have exempted their backup generation, regardless of what the PUC decided. So right now, we're really more focused on education and organization. Um, and to your question about the taxes and tax incentives and what's kind of required there. The current law doesn't require data centers to do anything different in terms of community engagement than any other kind of project. So Catherine Nuschler gave a great overview of kind of the different environmental review processes. But I just kind of wanted to note that something we are seeing, as she noted, as everybody here has kind of noted, like the AUARs, alternative urban area wide reviews, have been more popular for the kind of exclusively the thing we've seen besides the one in Faribault for reviewing these kinds of projects. And there are it's important to recognize that the AUAR, as written in the regulations, as considered in the regulations, they don't inherently have the same opportunities for public engagement as an EIS. As John explained, they can be more robust if the responsible governmental unit chooses to do so, if they put the effort in to like make sure that those things happen, but it is not the default. So a local unit of government really has to be the one to make sure that happens. But just for like a quick overview of a comparison, just based on what's default in the rules, the total timeline for an EIS, environmental impact statement, to be completed is 280 days from the notice of when the draft environmental impact statement is published to the final determination. The total timeline for an AUAR is 120 days. The scoping generally, John mentioned that in Cannon Falls they did do a scoping period. It's not generally required for an AUAR. It is required for an EIS. For draft EIS, there's a public meeting that is held that's required. It's not required necessarily for an AUAR. Again, cities can do more than that. And then there's some comment periods that both require an AUA, written comment periods that an AUAR and the EIS process consider. And then one of the biggest things is with the final EIS, there is an extra comment period that anybody can participate in. But for the AUAR in the rules as written, the only organizations, only groups that can submit objections to the final AUAR are state agencies and the Met Council. So just based on the rules, they are different. They can be more similar. And John's not the only one I've heard that from. I've heard it from a great county attorney who works on this kind of stuff as well. But it's not inherent to the system as it is. Um, and then I think also related to that, the tax incentives are not tied to any of these things. I know that, Tom mentioned that data centers are pay taxes, can be really great on that, but it really does depend on the state. So some states do actually offer property tax exemptions for data centers. That's not the case so far here in Minnesota, but we do allow data centers to claim a sales tax exemption for enterprise information technology and computer software. And so it previously included electricity purchases. That was removed this year through the legislature. But just important to draw your attention to the fact that enterprise information technology, that's one of the things that is exempt, includes things like computers and equipment, but also cooling systems, cooling towers, other temperature control infrastructure, and power infrastructure for transformation, distribution, or management of electricity used for the maintenance and operation of the facility. And that's directly from the state statutes. So, that's the kind of, just for context, the tax exemption we're talking about here. And again, there aren't any requirements around transparency or public engagement to receive that sales tax exemption. The only requirements that we have are about the size of the facility, the money spent for the facility. And then this year we added, which I think was great, labor provisions, and then some green building standards that somebody mentioned earlier. Um, and then just to finally on this point about transparency, in this year, the laws that we passed explicitly says that certain information related to data centers is not public. So that's the information provided to the DNR that Catherine Nuschler again mentioned earlier about this pre-application process. So information that is sent to the DNR at that point is not public information. Of course, if they submit an application, that would become public, but when they're talking with the DNR, it's not. And then also the information collected to determine the fee that data centers pay based on their peak demand, that is not public information. That, as written in the law, is never public information. It doesn't become public once they apply or anything. It just is not public information. So there's a
The
lot of
utility fee that they pay, you're saying.
the so it's the fee that they pay based on their peak demand. So that was added into the law this year too.